Hi, welcome back to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. I'm Doug O'Brien, as you probably guessed, and this is the Coaching Skills Podcast. Now, today I have a very special guest. Damon Cart is on the program today. He'll be talking to us about the self-concept model, which is something that was originated by Steve Andreas. I've had Connie Ray Andreas on this program. I've had Mark Andreas, their son, Steve, and Connie Ray's son, Mark Andreas, on this program. I never had Steve. Steve passed away a few years ago. Brilliant guy, incredible contributor to the world of NLP in a whole variety of ways. But he used to say that this self-concept model that he created is his best work. And nobody knows it better than the only person he ever endorsed to teach it is Damon Cart. So he'll be our guest today. Stay tuned. You gotta catch this. This is good. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level, while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important. Hey, Damon.
Hey.
How are you doing?
Good. Good to be here.
Haven't seen you in a long time.
It's been a while, and it shouldn't be though. We need to get together more. I always enjoy our conversations, and really enjoyed bringing you here to Santa Cruz. That was fun.
It was a thrill to me to be teaching Santa Cruz in the place, teaching sleight of mouth in Santa Cruz, which is where I learned sleight of mouth in like the 80s. So
That's where NLP started.
Where NLP started. And is that where you are now?
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. And that is a special thing to teach NLP in Santa Cruz. It's not often done, not by many people. So it is a very cool thing to do that.
Yeah, very cool. And you were doing, at the time, the NLP Gym, which was a pretty amazing, basically service podcast type video stuff that you offered to the world.
That was the name of my YouTube channel, but I ended up changing it. It all started as a practice group, and then the practice group turned into teaching workshops. And that was around the time that I tapped you to say, hey, man, people want sleight of mouth. They're asking about you. We want to come over here and do that. And you were like, I remember reading your email, and it was, I could kind of pick up on the emotion there, because you were like, wow, okay, I'm going to Santa Cruz and I'm teaching sleight of mouth where I learned sleight of mouth. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's great. It was really fun. It's great to be back in that area as well, just to breathe in the atmosphere of the NLP world, if you will, where it all started.
Yeah. Santa Cruz is a special place. It's there's a reason why they say keep Santa Cruz weird. It's a weird place. Weird and beautiful and nice.
Well, as I speak to you, I'm about a little bit more than a stone's throw. Slingshot stone, you have to really but not too far away from Woodstock, New York, which is also got its weirdness to it. Yeah. So between you and me, we're on the edges right here, at least
for sharing the weirdness right now, huh?
Sharing the weirdness. But I want to hear all about this self-concept model. I know that you've been doing it for a while. I saw some interviews that you did with Steve. Before he passed, and you're the only person that he ever endorsed to teach it in the entire world. So that's pretty good. And now you're doing it a lot, right? So can you just tell us, what is this thing, this self-concept model?
Yeah. So the way that I would often try to explain it is by starting off with a little bit of how Steve stumbled upon it. I shouldn't say stumbled. He worked really hard on it. But I'd like to take a different approach. And the approach that I would like to take is, when we think about this whole idea of personal development, self-improvement, self-help, what are we really after? And I think we're after much more than just solving these sort of like small problems in our lives, or temporary problems, or only the problems that we want to solve in a given context, like say like a phobia. NLP is very well known for the phobia process, but really, if you solve that problem, you're only solving that problem as far as being in the presence of that stimulus that causes the phobia. It's not a change or a transformation that you're going to carry with you like everywhere you go. It's only when the stimulus happens. Okay, if you've made the transformation, then the stimulus doesn't bother you. Like bees, if you're terrified of, phobic of bees, well, bees have to be around to trigger that response. So to make that change, it would only really affect you when bees are around, which how often is that? Not very often. So when we think about, well, what is personal development, self-improvement, self-help? Well, we want to transform ourselves. We want to be better. We want to be at least as close as we possibly can be to our ideal self. And I really think that the self-concept model is the crowning achievement of personal development. Now, there's always been some form of personal development around. I mean, you can go back all the way to the ancient Greeks with Stoicism. That, for me is a philosophy that I think really resonates with personal development. There's a lot of other philosophy out there that you could say the same thing, but nothing so accurately and nothing so applicable well, I guess it's the most applicable philosophy to personal development. And then when we came around with NLP, I think, we took a huge leap into what personal development, how far you can really take it. And I think Steve's model, the self-concept model, takes it even further than that and is at the top of the NLP models. So if you go ahead.
Yes, I did have a question. So, is it NLP? Is it a version of NLP?
100%.
100%.
100%.
Okay.
So what I also say too is, like, if you think about where Steve came from, it makes a lot of sense why he ended up going in this direction. Because you have NLPers, developers who have been around since the 70s, and they go off in all different directions. But Steve was on this one, and when I think more about his history, whenever he first started to mentor me, a friend of mine, you know him, Sid Jacobson, Sid, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I told Sid Jacobson that I was being mentored by Steve, and he was just like, "Whoa, really?" And I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, man, that guy was mentored by Maslow, Abraham Maslow," and I was like, "I did not know that," and so I
Mhm.
went to Steve about it, and Steve was just kind of like, "It was no big
Oh,
deal,"
yeah,
and
Abraham.
yeah,
Whatever.
and one of the things he told me in one of the interviews, one of the last interviews, I asked him more about Maslow, and he's like, "Well, Maslow was disappointing." He said, "I was really happy that Maslow gave me a shot, but I was a little disappointed because he didn't really walk his talk." So when you think about Maslow, I mean, in a lot of ways, the modern personal development, the modern self-help, the modern human potential movement really kind of started with Maslow. He was the one who stepped in and said, "All right, hey, we're kind of looking at this all wrong. We're looking at pathology, and we need to be looking at what's right with us, and we need to go in that direction." And I think that had a lasting effect on Steve, which eventually led him to Gestalt therapy. He was the first one certified by Fritz Perls in Gestalt therapy.
I did not
So,
know that. That's
yeah,
interesting. He was the first
he was
one certified by Fritz Perls.
he was directly mentored by Fritz Perls.
Wow.
So here's the other thing about Steve. I'm just going to gush about Steve for a little bit, so bear with me.
Please gush
He
away.
he, I think, is the only person, unless someone else surfaces, there might be another person out there, but I think he is the only person who ever in person worked with all three of the therapists NLP was modeled after: Fritz Perls,
Perls.
Virginia Satir, and Milton
Milton
Erickson.
Erickson.
He met all of them in person and worked with them. And if you want to take it even further back, like I said, he worked with Maslow, who most people do credit as being sort of the godfather of human potential. And, Maslow made the hierarchy of needs. Steve comes along, learns it, and then debunks it and says, we're not that simple. We can't put ourselves into one single hierarchy. We have different contexts, different areas of our life, and we will find ourselves in a different hierarchy in each one. So I think he was inspired by Maslow, and then he, realized what wasn't working and went after what actually was working. So when you think about this, when you think about all of your beliefs, and I know you're really into like belief change and belief transformation as well. When you think about what's the mother of all beliefs, the belief that affects all of your beliefs, that is the self, the belief of who you are, the generalization of who you are. And so you change that, and that transcends space and time. Because if you think about it, so like I can change a belief I have about the economy. If I'm struggling in my business, I can say, "Oh, I'm struggling because the economy is bad," which would then make me feel rather helpless because, what can I do about the economy? But if I change that belief about the economy and say, "No, there's lots of opportunity in the economy." Okay, and so this one area, I'm probably then going to do better. I'm going to prosper. But if I change a belief about myself, then it doesn't matter if I'm in the area of my business or I'm at home with my kids or as a husband or I told you earlier I'm at I was at Brazilian Jiu Jitsu earlier this morning. If I change a belief in my identity, that is going to follow me in every context of my life. And so transformation at the identity level is to me the crowning achievement of personal development. It also holds the key to what we're all after, which is fulfillment.
Mhm.
We think we want to accomplish big things, and there's nothing wrong with that. We think we want to make a lot of money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But of course, we know people who accomplish big things, make a lot of money, are famous, beautiful, and completely unhappy. And some of them tragically even commit suicide. So we know that those external things aren't what really fulfills us. So what really fulfills us? When we believe and it's an accurate belief, meaning we actually walk our walk or we walk the talk, when we believe we are our highest values and we live that, that is the height of all purpose and meaning and fulfillment. And I've experienced this for myself because I didn't really have a sense of purpose. Like I'm kind of I'm an atheist, and I come from a very religious background. I had a lot of beliefs imposed on me, and so I had to shed a lot of those beliefs to shed a lot of limitations. And so I just kind of came out to a point where I was like, I see people who seem to feel like they have a purpose, but I don't really know what that is. And I'd like to know what that is. And maybe you just make it up, or I don't know. And I just kind of I didn't really pursue it. But as I was using the self concept model, and the piece of it that I kind of brought into it was doing a values elicitation, finding my highest values, and then transforming each one of those highest values into certain and solid beliefs about myself. Like, say, one of your values is happiness. Are you a happy person? Most people are going to kind of go, sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. And that's what we call an ambiguous quality. Well, how would it change your life if you transformed that ambiguous quality into a certain and solid quality? And not just that, this is not fake it till you make it. This is taking data, information, experiences that you've actually lived and restructuring them, because that's what NLP is really about. It's about the structure. It's about restructuring information so that it feels the way that we want it to feel. So if I'm feeling ambiguous about my happiness, that means I have competing counterexamples. And those counterexamples are also structured in a way that feel very certain. So these examples and counterexamples are butting up against each other. So that's why when someone would ask the question, "Are you a happy person?" I go to my examples, and this is all unconscious. I go to my examples and I go, well, yeah, sometimes. And I go to my counterexamples and I go, "Oh, well, not so much." So what if we take a quality that you already feel very certain about and that you already like about yourself? We model the structure of that, and then we take that raw data of information, like of being happy, the happy experiences you've had, and map
Mhm.
that in to that structure so that that information now feels very certain and very solid. Well, now you're going to feel like a happy person. And because you feel it and it's based on those actual experiences, it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy, because our past experiences are sort of a feedback system. Our past experiences kind of tell us in the present, hey, watch out for this, do more of this. That makes you happy, do more of that, but don't do this other thing. And then we also create a feed forward system in the self concept model. We future pace it by imagining examples of us being the quality that we want to be going forward. And so you have a feedback system and a feed forward system. And that's what really keeps us in alignment with these values. And so you actually live out the qualities that you value most highly. And it's an extraordinary experience to go through, especially when you go value for value for value and transform each one of them into certain and solid qualities of who you are.
Okay, got it. Yeah, it all makes complete sense. Um, Believe it or not, I have a question or two about all
Right.
that. Because I will admit to you, I've done very little study of the self-concept model. So, in a sense, I'm hearing this for the first time. Um, As you said, I've done a lot of sleight of mouth is all about beliefs.
Hmm.
It's all about changing beliefs and eliciting what is the belief that people have. Um, and I know that Robert Dilts, who developed sleight of mouth, also developed what he called the hierarchy of logical levels or
Neurological
neurological
levels.
levels. Yeah.
Yeah,
At the
which
top of
Steve
which is
which Steve debunked as well.
Steve debunked a lot of shit. That was his major hobby, I think.
He pissed off a lot of people.
He
He
did.
wasn't very popular, but he never meant it in a nasty way. He's never attacked people personally, but they
Right.
felt that way.
Yeah. Anyway, the highest logical level of the first 5 basic ones is the identity.
Hmm.
Who you are is at the highest logical level. A lot of capabilities, behaviors thing at the
Well,
lower.
neurological levels is actually the spiritual thing.
Well, yeah,
The highest.
but okay. So the first 5, the original 5, like Maslow's, were 5 things that ended up with identity, and then he went from there. So, but who else is involved in this? What a spiritual thing could go beyond that. So
Right.
that became that in mission, et cetera. So yes, you're right. And um, for beyond the spiritual, before it leaves like you personally,
Mhm.
it's who are you? Who is
Right.
your identity? And I know that I have different identities, different times I'm different people. Like for instance, when I'm being an athlete, when I'm boxing or running a marathon or whatever, that's me. I am an athlete, right? There are other times I'm with my wife dancing. I am the lover. I'm the dancer.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like different hero archetypes, the hero, the warrior, the lover, the magician, different archetypes. With the self concept, are you looking for to just say above all of that, there's really just one thing that you are, that you come out with one sort of unifying theory for
Yeah.
all of it?
So
Yeah.
it's a great question because this is the kind of stuff when I'm teaching it that I have to really pick apart. Because yeah, when you start off with the question of like, well, who are you? Your mind just kind of goes in all different directions. Well, I'm a lot of things,
Yeah.
just like you were saying. So a lot of the things that you were mentioning were roles that you play,
Hmm.
and so there's a hierarchy with the self concept model that much more accurate than neurological levels, and that is at
According
the
to Steve.
yeah. I've done videos on debunking neurological levels, and man,
Yeah.
I always get a lot of hate off of that. They're like, "How dare you, question Robert Dilts?" And it's like, Robert's a great guy. Learned a lot from him. I learned from him for years. But Steve was not the only one who debunked neurological levels. John Grinder did as well. L. Michael Hall did as well. It just doesn't follow logical levels. Like it's a nice model, but it has a lot of limitations too. Because anything that doesn't square up with actual logical levels, you're going to run into some problems at some point. So anyway, the self-concept model at the bottom of the hierarchy is just experience, just raw experience,
Hmm.
which by the way is subjective. This is another thing I run into. I have to kind of like work it out with people, and they're like, well, how can you say experience is subjective? Because I know I experienced this, and I'm not questioning whether or not it actually happened. It's subjective in the sense that all experience has these things in common: a beginning and an end. Therefore, there's a middle, right? But you've never truly experienced a beginning nor an end. You don't remember being born. Your mind was not couldn't structure things well enough when you were a baby to create an experience of being born. You're not dead, so you didn't experience an end. What you have experienced is one continuous stream of consciousness that, in order for you to make sense of it, you've divided it up into chunks that we call experiences. And you mark in a beginning and you mark out an ending. You say, that's when I started school and that's when school ended, or that's when I went go to the boxing gym. And then this is when that experience was over with. But the truth is that we can go into those experiences and can actually change the beginning points and the ending points, and it will make you feel differently about those
Mm.
experiences. It's a really fun exercise to do. And the same thing, we can prove this by, like, what if you experience something with someone? You went dancing with your wife. Now, if I separated the two of you and I said, Doug, what is your sense of when that experience began? And then I went to your wife and say, to her, what is your experience of that when the dancing experience began? You're probably not going to be exactly at the same time. And the
Right.
same thing with the ending point. So that's purely subjective. So where you're marking in and where you're
Sure.
marking out is subjective. And just by changing those, it actually will change the way that you feel about that experience. So anyway, that's my little rant about experience being subjective.
Hmm.
So we have at the base level of the hierarchy in the self-concept model is experience. And then when I have enough experiences about something and it also is connected to myself, then it generalizes at a higher logical level as a quality. So, for example, I go to school when I'm a kid and I get an A on a test, and the teacher says, "Wow, you're really smart." Then I go home, my mother sees the test, says, "Wow, you're really smart." Dad sees the test, he says the same thing. My mom puts it on the refrigerator, the neighbor comes over and says, "Wow, your kid's really smart." So now I took a test, I did really well at it. That means I'm smart. So I'm connecting this experience with a category, smartness or intelligence. And if this happens enough times, then I will really start to identify as an intelligent person, which is now a quality. So it went from experience, and you select and collect enough experiences and that involve you, and then it generalizes into a quality. I am this. Now, unfortunately, it happens the other way too. It happens for negative
Sure.
quality. We call them negative qualities, even though quality
Absolutely.
has a connotation of being positive. It can be negative. You
Yeah.
get told enough times, and this is really unfortunate. But when you're a kid, you get told enough times that you're stupid.
Yeah.
Then you think of
Or
yourself as being
clumsy,
stupid.
or any number of things. Sure.
Right. So if you take a person who believes they're intelligent and it's backed by actual experiences that they've had, and you take a person who believes they're unintelligent and that's backed by experience because the parent, might have said, "Well, you did this thing and that makes you stupid." So who do you think is going to go throughout the world doing smarter things?
Hmm.
It's obvious, right? So, and then when we generalize all of the qualities we generalize about ourselves, then we go to a higher logical level, and that's what we call self-concept. So, self-concept as the generalization of all of the generalizations you make about yourself.
Okay.
Now, there's one more logical level higher than that, and that is how do I feel about my self-concept? How do I feel about what I believe about myself? And that's self-esteem. So if I believe I am the qualities that I value, my self-esteem is going to be high. It's going to be grounded. It's going to be persistent and resilient. And because my self-esteem is high, I'm going to go out there and take more risk. I'm going not stupid risk, but I'm going to put myself out there. I'm not going to fear failure because I know that I can fail 100 times and it's not going to affect my self-esteem. I mean, it
Hmm.
may shake it a little bit, but I'll be resilient. And so when we do self-concept, when we do the work, we work at the level of qualities. The generalization, the self-concept generalization, your identity is too big of a generalization to work directly at, to work head on. And self-esteem is even worse, because it's even more general, it's more vague. But what do you see in most personal development? People are trying to work directly at the self-esteem level. Like, I just want to make myself feel better about
Hmm.
something,
Yeah.
or I want to be confident about something that I've never done before. I get that one all the time. It's like, well, you're not supposed to be confident at things you've never done before. Like, do you want to be confident at flying an airplane and you never had a lesson? You're going to hurt people. You're going to hurt yourself and probably other people. So we want to, and when I say all this stuff, we're not faking anything. This is actually using real life
Hmm.
experiences to back this up and to structure it in such a way that that's where you put your attention, because that's really who you are, is wherever you put your attention, and that's the experience you're going to have in life is based on what you give your attention to.
Hmm. That's fascinating.
Yeah,
Really, it's great. Um, did Steve ever write a book on this?
yeah, it's right here. Oop, my mine is falling apart. Let's see if I
Uh-huh.
can.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Do
that's okay.
you
I
recognize the picture behind me?
I can't see the whole. Let me put you in this.
So this is the book, and
I'm
then
sorry, wrong. I highlighted the wrong guy. Hold on a second. Let me see. There we go. Oh yeah, there we go.
so
Good.
that's the book.
I think I actually have that book, believe it or not. I should probably
Yeah. Well, it's
find
funny. I read
it and read it.
when I first had my first transformation, where I sat down and said, "Okay, I'm going to work on a quality here." Um, it just absolutely blew me away. I was like, "Did this just really happen?" I mean, it was so the quality I was using was a quality of gratitude.
Hmm.
I I when if you were to ask me at that time, was I a grateful person? I would have said, "Well, sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not." And so I thought this was the perfect quality to start on. And within less than an hour, I was grateful. And I mean, I was had tears in my eyes. I was looked at, I was thinking about my life and how amazing it's been, and just all the people who have helped me along the way. And I mean, I
Hmm.
was like filled with gratitude, and that has never stopped. And I've not had to go back and work on the quality. That's the other thing. When you really nail it, like you think about all of the beliefs you have about yourself right now, you don't practice them, you just sort of live through them, even if they're
Right.
limiting and negative or if they're positive. So once you make these changes, this is not something you have to go back and redo or practice, unless every once in a while you might not have quite nailed it and you have to go back and fix something. But yeah, it grows on itself. Like you find more, you select and collect your experiences in such a way that it continues to strengthen the quality. So I feel even more grateful this today than I did 10 years ago when I first transformed the quality. And it's not like I have had to work on it. It's just that's how beliefs work. And I wrote to Steve and I said, okay. And Steve was very, I don't want to say he was critical. He was just very precise. Like
Hmm.
I would do something and I would report to him about what I did, or I would do a demonstration with someone on video and I would send him the video, and he always had something, like, he was you couldn't catch a break.
No, I know it's true.
But but when I told him what I had done with this first quality that I had transformed, I was pretty sure I did it right, but I wanted, I was like, "Okay, send it to Steve and see what he says." And he came back, and it was the most beautiful email. He was like, "You just made my day. You took what I gave you, and you used it, and you made it work, and that's the highest compliment." And in my email, I had said to him, why isn't everybody teaching this? Like, why isn't every NLP institute teaching this? Why isn't even further than that? I mean, I think not only is this the most powerful NLP model, I think it's the most powerful model, period. As far as personal development goes, this is the crowning achievement of the human potential movement. I actually do believe this, that Steve nailed it. And like I said, it comes from that history of what Maslow was after. And I think Maslow didn't, he failed at it. Steve was his mentee, and he picked up that torch. And I don't even think Steve thought about it that way. I really don't. But when I look on it, that's the way that I see it. But when you were talking about the book, you said you own a copy. I think every like major every NLP teacher out there probably does have a copy. And when I read the testimonials in it by some of the top NLP teachers, I don't think those people actually read the book. And if they read the book, I don't think they actually used it. They might have just read the book and went through it, and you're not gonna get it. You're totally not going to get it unless you stop and do all of the exercises as he goes through the book. It's really based on transcripts from him teaching the model is really
Okay.
what it is, and then he gives you, the individual exercises as you go. If you wait to the end and then try to go and do the exercises, it's just not the same. You have to do it as if it's being taught to you, and so the training that I do, the pretty much the business that I run
Yeah.
is that, like, we are taking people step by step through the process, and it takes time. I took to it very fast, but I had already been doing years of NLP training, and I was practicing every single day. By this time, I was even starting to teach, and I was coaching people. So when I got a hold of the book, I went
Mhm.
through it very fast. And when I started teaching it, I was a little disappointed because I thought everybody was going to have that wow experience super quick, like I did. And it just, for a lot of people, it takes time because so much of this stuff is just in your unconscious, and you really got to pull it out on the table and start looking at the stuff. And people just aren't used to doing that. But the people who I've worked with who have never done self concept, and I coach them, and they were just like breezed through this.
Mhm.
People who have a very consistent meditation practice, like meditating for an hour a day, like they took to this stuff, they take to this stuff like it's nothing. Like it's all very natural for them. They transform very, very fast. So it's, if you're in the mode of doing this kind of work on yourself, you'll take to it pretty quickly. Otherwise, you might have to work a little harder for it, but it's absolutely worth it to do the work.
Cool. Let me just ask you another question. I've been thinking about. process thing that Leslie Cameron Bandler did a number of years ago, probably in Santa Cruz as well, at the time when she was married to Richard. But I don't even know what it's called. I think it might be called the imperative self or something like that. But basically the idea is this, that she believed that every person had a unique question that was integral to them. There was one singular question that they had. And I won't mention any names, but I used to use an example of a particular New York State real estate guy, and I said his primary question was, "What's in it for me?" And no matter where he went, or where anybody goes, they carry that question with him. But he might go to a boardroom on Wall Street, or he might go to an orphanage in Biafra. But it's always like, what's in it for me? That's what his focus on. That's his imperative question is. Whereas a woman like Mother Teresa, hypothetically, I don't know her, but she might have had a question that was more along the lines of like, how can I, serve God in this situation? How can I serve, my fellow man in this? How can I be of service to this situation? And wherever she went, whether it was a boardroom in Wall Street or a orphanage in Biafra, she would carry that question and focus on things based on that. I'm just wondering when you do this self-concept process, when you sort of help to establish that uber self-concept of who I really am, with all these different roles that I have and parts that I am and all these other things, but who am I really? And that defines me. Is there something like that? Is there something like a question that you then use to filter and focus, on the important things that are important to you?
Yeah, and I use the very typical NLP question.
Which is?
Well, if let me put it a different way. If if you don't uh, if you don't want this, then NLP can't help you, and that is if you don't want anything, NLP can't help you. And I think this was another part where I think people struggle with the book Transforming Yourself and the self-concept model. Steve would make a lot of assumptions about people. One of them was he assumed you were as smart as he was. That was tough because I would feel like I disappointed the man so many times because he would be like, "And I thought you would know that." And I was like, "Oh man, that stings. I know you don't mean it in a bad way, but but he assumed that, and he would assume is that everybody knows their values, and it's like most people do not know what their values are. So in the book, he will talk about you need to find a quality that you value, and that's what's going to give you fulfillment. If you don't value the quality, then you're not going to be motivated to transform it. You're also not going to get a lot of feel good out of that. It's not going to feel very fulfilling or satisfying, and it's not going to raise your self-esteem. You have to value it. So even in the book, he says that. I'm just going to assume you know what your values are. And if you go back and understand, like at the time when he was teaching it, these were students of his. These were advanced students of his who had taken several courses with him over years. And so, of course, they knew their values. Like they had already covered that years before. And so I don't think he covered that well enough. And you talked about Mark Andreas. I didn't know Mark and Connie Ray were on your show. That's awesome. They're just wonderful people.
They are indeed.
Yeah. And so when I was being mentored by Steve and I was curious about core transformation, I was thinking about asking Connie Ray, and I had actually met Connie Ray before I met Steve. That's how I met Steve. Connie Ray, I had facilitated training for her through an institute here, and for that I was able to go to her training for free and all of that. And we just really hit it off. She goes home. A few months later, I get an email in my inbox that says Steve Andreas, and I was like, "Oh wow, okay." I either did something really well or I did something really bad because he had a bit of a reputation as being kind of a hard ass. Yeah,
well deserved.
Yeah, and
well earned. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And when I opened the email, I mean, I was just delighted. At the time, I felt like a Ronin, a samurai without a teacher, and that's where I was in my NLP point. At that point. I had a lot of training, had a lot of experience, but I had really hit a plateau. And his email just came at the right time. He's like, "Hey, if you need help, Connie Ray has said some great things about you. I'd love to help you out." And I was like, "Oh man, this guy has no idea what he's getting himself into," because I just emailed him question after question. I had a lot of questions, And then eventually he would say, well, let's just get on Skype. I don't want to sit here and try to write out all the answers. And we would spend a few hours on Skype, and he'd be like, Damon, I'm tired. I'm hungry. Like, he was almost 80 at the time. And I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And then he would, we would pick up the call later. And that was eventually he said, hey, I think I know what you want. Or I think I know what you're looking for. And I was like, good, because that makes one of us, because I don't really know what I'm after. And he said, go read the book, Transforming Yourself. He's like, I think that's what you're looking for. And it was exactly what I was looking for. He knew what I was looking for when I didn't know what I was looking for, but I was obviously looking for something. So anyway, I was curious about core transformation. I had thought about asking asking Connie Ray if she would come. And then I thought, I'm always complaining that the old guard, the older generation, the NLP teachers and trainers who had been there since the beginning, they're not giving up. Like, I feel like I was going to have to pry the torch out of their, old pruny hands.
Hey.
Hey, I'm not counting you. You're a later generation, so I'm not counting you in that. Okay.
Robert Dilts and I are 2 years apart. Just so you know.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. Then I'll take that back. I'm sorry. Don't kick me off. So, and I had known that Mark taught core transformation, their son, Mark Andreas. And so I thought, that would be the best thing for me to sort of live up to what I keep saying. Hey, they need to let us in. And so I went to Steve and I said, hey, would you introduce me to Mark? And so he did. And, I don't know how well you know Mark. I don't know if you've only known him from him being on your show, but if you've ever met him in person, what a beautiful soul of a person. Yeah. And that he's exactly what you would expect from two legendary NLP parents raising him. I mean, that's exactly like you try to talk, like we get along very well, but at the same time, like, I talk about the miseries and the depressions that I had been through, and which is what led me to NLP, and I wanted to, solve this problem. And it was like, he has no experience like that. It's just like, he had a great childhood. Everything was great. No problems, like, on that level, we can't really relate. But anyway, I asked him if he would want to come to Santa Cruz and teach core transformation. He was like, yeah, I'd love to. So he comes over, and the first thing he says to me, he says, my dad told me, the only thing he told me about you is that if I tell you to do something, you'll do it. Damon will actually do it. And I was like, nobody, like, I was thinking what he was referring to is Steve had been maybe not mentoring a lot of people, but people would come to him and he would say, well, go do this thing. And they just wouldn't do it. And when he told me to do something, I always did it. And I think that's what he was referring to. So anyway, we do the core transformation training. I love it. Connie Ray's great. She's brilliant. And core transformation is a great model. Yep. And it was the first time that I had seen values elicitation being a part of a complete NLP model. Like, in your practitioner training, you're going to learn values elicitation probably as a part of the well-formed outcome, but you don't go that deep into it. You get a few, things, and they call it meta outcomes, and then you're off to the next thing. So I had taken a bunch of NLP trainings. I'd taken practitioner training 3 times with different teachers. And every time values elicitation would come up. And every time I thought, man, this is really powerful. Why don't they do anything more with it? But I didn't know enough to think to do anything more with it. When I saw core transformation, and it's really based around a values elicitation, I was like, okay, this is powerful. And I got to find a way to bring this into self-concept model. Now, even before this, I had gone to Steve and said, okay, Steve, all right, I can transform qualities now. Or is it just like I go reach out into the world and just grab whatever quality that I want and I just transform it? And he was like, yeah, pretty much. And I was like, it was overwhelming to think about it, and I use the analogy. I felt like a kid in a candy store. Like, where do you even start? You have free access to all the qualities you could ever want, all the qualities that you ever value. Where do you start? And when I took the core transformation training, that's when I realized this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a values elicitation. And one thing we know about values is that they cross over very well as qualities. So like, if you value persistence, well, you can be a persistent person. If you value success, you can be a successful person. So I broke my life down into 5 contexts, like 5 major life contexts. And in each one of them, I asked myself, what do I want? And I did a values elicitation in each context. And then after I did that, I did a hierarchy of my values for each context. And I looked at the values, the very highest ones that overlapped and that showed up in every single context of my life.
Mhm.
The 3 that always show up in every context of my life: joy, passion, and
I think you would know that. I'm so
yeah, no,
disappointed.
I'm totally blanking because I thought as soon as I go to
I'm
say
so
this, I'm gonna blank
disappointed
on
in
it.
you. I'm trying to be Steve, channeling Steve here.
Yeah,
I think you would know that.
joy,
Uh,
passion, and freedom.
freedom. There it is.
And the freedom's a tricky one because it's a value, but it's not actually a quality. But we can talk about where
Okay.
that can take you a little bit later. So
Interesting.
I decided, okay, that's where I'm really going to start this work.
Can you hold that thought for 1 second? Because
Sure.
I just wanted to just remember where you are.
Mhm.
Um, I like what you've just said because it's really interesting to me that in values elicitations I've done with people over the years and myself in various trainings, I, like you, took many trainings from many different people because I found it really valuable to see different approaches to the same subject and see, how they did it. So I learned it more thoroughly, more fully for myself. Um, but people could have very different values in their personal relationship as they would in business.
For sure.
Very different values in business and relationships
Mhm.
or whatever else. So it's really interesting, that process that you did to do the values elicitation within each different sort of, you know, category, and then say, what is the hierarchy of those values within that category?
Mhm.
And then you found the sort of the commonalities that were there for all of those contexts, and you say, God, those are my real 3 top ones.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that the other ones aren't important and
Yeah,
that you
right, of
shouldn't
course.
work on
Yeah.
them or any of that. Yeah, but I wanted to really I didn't like the kind of sloppiness it felt to just go out there and just grab, like, "Oh, I like this. I'm gonna transform that as a quality." It was like,
Mhm.
"No, I wanna go after the big ones," because and Steve taught this in the book too, the more you value the quality, the more important it is to you. When you transform it, the more it's going to the more fulfillment you're going to get out of it, the more sense of purpose, the more confidence, the more self-esteem you're going to get out of it. So I was like, well, I want to work from the top first. I don't want to, play around with these little qualities and then gradually, hit some big ones every once in a while. I want to go straight forward. So I went after transfer. Oh, here was the thing. So once you elicit the values and once you do the hierarchy, the next question is you go through each one and you say, am I, and insert the value. And when I did that, it turned out none of my highest values did I feel certain and solid about. They all felt ambiguous. And
Huh.
then I thought, wow, how must this be affecting my life? Well, I knew exactly how it was affecting my life. I wasn't very happy. I felt very limited. I was just coming off of a divorce. I was miserable in my business. I mean, there was so many things, and I'd go, "Well, duh! Like this is why." I mean, I had gone through 2 depressions at this point. This. I was pretty sure. My hypothesis was that I was pretty sure that this was holding the key to what was limiting me and why was I suffering.
Yeah.
If you don't believe you are the things that you value, it's going to limit you. It's going to lower
Sure,
your
of
self
course.
esteem,
Yeah.
and it's going to limit your fulfillment. And so I went one by one and just transformed every single one of them. It took me a few months. There was more than 3, I just because I went after the ones in the context, even the ones that didn't overlap into other contexts. And when I did that, my life just 180 degrees. Boom! It
Right.
shifted so fast, and everything around me was changing so fast. And this is why I really emphasize this. If you want the world around you to change in the sense of like having more opportunities, getting the things that you want in life. When you transform yourself, that's when that happens. It really feels like your reality is completely changing because your reality is all based on you. All of your beliefs are a branch of the mother of all your beliefs, which is your self concept. And so my life changed so fast. I mean, it was almost like, and I felt that's where for the first time I actually felt like I had purpose and meaning, and it was coming from me. And I'd never felt that before. And then I went to Steve and I said, okay, Steve, you haven't heard from me in a few months. Here's what I did. And I got to tell you, my life is unrecognizable compared to where it was when you first met me. And his only response was, I'm not surprised. So yeah, and I wanted to share this with the world immediately, and that was the hard part because I was like, I want everybody to be able to learn this and do this. And as soon as you start trying to communicate that, you realize you just sound like everybody else. Like all of the marketing out there, I was like, and then I'd be like, well, but no, this is the real deal. Like this is real transformation. And people are just like, well, yeah, that's what everybody else says too.
That's what everybody else does too. No,
Yeah,
that's
it
great.
was just like,
Yeah.
so it was the hardest thing to really communicate this. And so I taught it for a while in live workshops, and it became the majority of my coaching practice. And then I was talking to Mark Andreas, and he was like, actually, I think I brought him in for another training, and he was like, "Have you talked to my dad recently?" And I said, "No," and he's like, "He's not doing well, and in fact, he's kind of letting everybody know that he's not going to be around much longer." And I was like, "Oh shit!" And I was, I mean, didn't want to lose him for sure, but he was already up in age, and so one thing I wanted to do was to create an online training of transforming yourself. And so I went to him to get his blessing, and he said, "Yeah, please do, go for it." And so I made that training, and so I felt like I was, stepping a little bit closer and closer to try to get the message out to everybody. And about a year after Steve died, I got this guy came to me and he wanted me to coach him. And he had started with Mark, and Mark was kind of like, well, he kept showing a lot of interest in the self concept model. And Mark was like, well, if you're really interested in this, you should really reach out to Damon. And so he came to me and we coached for a while. And I thought he was a very interesting guy. His name's Nate Moore. And if you look him up, you'll find he's very successful entrepreneur. He started a lot of big companies. I'll just put it that way. He doesn't like me talking about it, but we did some coaching for a while, and then he disappeared. And he had some major transformations. And I also could tell he had already done some work on himself. Like that was kind of weird. And I finally
Mhm.
kind of asked him. I was like, "Okay, who are you?" And he started explaining to me to his background and everything, which surprised me because I knew some of the businesses he had started. And then he disappears for a while. And then a few months later, he hits me up. He says, "Do you want to talk business?" And I thought he wanted more coaching. And then I said, "Sure." And he had a PowerPoint ready. And he was like, "I want to take self concept to the world.
Really?
Are you in?" And I was like, well, first of all, hell yeah, I'm in. But I warned him. I said, it's not the easiest thing to communicate to people what this really is. Because if you tell them the truth, they don't believe it, and so they have to experience it. And so getting them to experience it, that's the hard part.
Mm.
And I think he kind of thought that it was going to be like his past successes and his past businesses, but and I was like, no, I know how hard this is to communicate to people. And so we've been working together for almost 5 years, and he has had the Herculean task of trying to get this, communicated to the world. And of course, I do through my YouTube channel. I cover a lot of things in NLP, not just self concept. Uh, but it's working. We're getting it out there, and the business is growing. And we've turned out even coaches. We do a coaching program now, so it's still not the easiest thing to communicate. We're still working on that, but we're making progress.
Let me just stop you. We're gonna finish this, wrap this up in a few minutes, and I will ask you where do people find out about this. But I'm just really curious because I asked you at the beginning of the thing, Steve Andreas said this was his best work, and I said, "Is it NLP?" And you said, "Yes, it is." Um, so to learn it, does a person have to like be a practitioner of NLP, a master practitioner of NLP? They
Well, that's the way it was, Steve taught it, and, that was a question that, my business partner and I, we pondered. We are like, "Can we just bring people straight into this and teach them?" And it was like, "Well, let's give it a try." And sure enough, we're able to do that.
okay.
And what often happens is once people learn the model, they become very curious about, well, what was this model based on? So they want to learn NLP. And
Mhm.
I have done a practitioner training, and so one of the bonuses we give people whenever they start the training is we let them have the practitioner training. We tell them not necessarily to focus on that right away because it's a lot to take in, uh, but oftentimes they do get curious about it because they're like, how did people come about this, and what is it all based on? And so they can go through my practitioner training and learn all
Yeah,
that. But no,
yeah.
we've been very successful at teaching people who have had zero experience with NLP coming in and being able to do it. Sometimes the NLP students are actually the problematic ones because they're fixated on the way that they were taught before. And I'm sure you know this, and I'm sure you're maybe a little more diplomatic about it than I am, but there's a lot of NLP teachers out there who don't actually know NLP. They don't actually know they don't actually understand what they're teaching.
I don't know if I'm any more diplomatic than you are. Yeah, there's a lot of bullshit.
Okay, okay, then
Um,
yeah. So I think people are taught a lot of incorrect things, and
yeah.
especially when they get to the coaching training level. I mean, I've yelled at people. I was just like, how many times have I told you neurological levels does not apply to what we're doing? And I was just like, sometimes they it's like that. There's a cognitive bias, whereas it's something I don't remember the name of it, but it's when the first thing that you hear or the first thing you learn, you stick with that, and everything else afterward, you make comparisons to it, and you fixate on that. So when people have learned NLP from a different place, and especially if they've learned things that aren't actually NLP, and then they bring them in and they keep asserting that, I'm like, okay, you're not learning anything. You're not. You got to open your mind. This is
Yeah.
not. You can't. We can't get this stuff in there if you're passing it through this filter
Yeah.
of erroneous NLP.
Yeah. There's a lot of that, and there's also it's true for human beings in general. There's I'm sure a story that you are familiar with about a man who went to a Zen monk to learn the meaning of life, and he said, "Sure, let's just have some tea first." And so he gets a pot of tea and starts pouring the man some tea, and then it just keeps pouring, and it starts overflowing, and it's making a mess. And the guy's freaking out. You're stop, it's full. You can't put anything more in there. It's full. I said, yeah, and that's like what you are. You're full of your own ideas and concepts, and nothing more can go in there until you empty yourself of all those
Yeah.
previous things.
Yeah,
Right.
Steve definitely cracked that whip over my head several times, and he would even say, he was like, "Who taught you?" And I was like, "Steve, you know who taught me. I already told you that." And he was like, "I have a hard time believing they taught you that." I said, "Go look it up." And he would come back and he'd be like, "They did teach you that." And I was
Mm.
like, "Yes, they did." And he goes, "It's wrong. Drop it now." And he was, I mean, every time I challenged him, he was right. Yeah, it was a very humbling experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so now, Damon, you teach this shit. So I'm sorry, stuff. This remarkable, this great model. you, you you teach it. You coach people through it. You coach people into becoming coaches to do that. So
Mhm.
how does one of my listeners today get hold of you to learn this stuff? Remind me once before you do that. The name of Steve's book is Transforming
Yourself,
Yourself. Yourself
transforming yourself.
by
Yep.
Steve Andreas.
Yep.
And he has a video as well, does he not, of himself teaching this?
He does have a training, an online training of him. It's basically a video of him teaching it at a live workshop.
Okay, cool. So that is available to people, and you are available where?
Selfconcept.com.
Selfconcept.com, one word, selfconcept.com.
Yep. And without the hyphen. Some people, the actual word has a hyphen in it, but on the website, the URL doesn't have a hyphen in it.
Right.
Also, I mean, as most people find me on YouTube. That's where they initially find me. I've got a pretty good channel going there. Been doing it for 8 years. You're on it. People still watch the video interview I did with you,
Excellent.
and still comment on it actually. So
Good.
yeah, I've been doing that for quite a while. So I don't only focus on self concept on the YouTube channel. I do other NLP stuff and other personal development stuff. But yeah, just my name, Damon Cart, if you want to find me on YouTube.
Damon Cart, some people might be listening to this as well. So DamonCart.
Correct.
And
It's
for
Carter
the
without the ER.
and for the YouTube channel, is it again one word?
No, it's Damon
Damon.
space Cart. Yeah,
Okay.
just my name.
So not self-concept there. It's Damon Cart YouTube. But if they want to get hold of you and for this specifically, then they go to
Self concept.
selfconcept.com.
Yep.
Cool. Great. Anything else? Is it emails? Are you available like Damon@selfconcept.com or anything like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. If you want to email me, Damon@selfconcept.com.
Cool. Excellent. Well, listen, thank you so much for being here. This is absolutely fascinating to me. And I promise you this, I will do this in honor of Steve, and I will do what I'm saying. I'm going to find my copy of that book because I'm
Excellent.
99% sure that I have it.
Still
Just
available on Amazon if you want to order it.
I don't. I want to find my copy, but if anyone else does, it is available on Amazon. But yeah, I will get it and read it because this is really fascinating, and I am fascinated by it, and really appreciate you enlightening me and hopefully plenty of other people by being on this podcast with me.
Yeah, the main thing with the book is just take your time with it. You're going to take to it pretty fast because your NLP background. But for people listening, you take your time with it. It's not, if you're coming to it new, it's going to take some patience. But do the exercises, and the more you do them, it's just like meditating. These things will become clearer and clearer.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Hey, it was a pleasure. Really glad you reached out to me to do this. It's been too long since the last time we talked, so I really enjoyed this.
Good. Good. Do it again soon.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. This has been the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure seeing you again. Hope to see you again real soon. Come back next week when we have another gripping and exciting episode of the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. And if you want to, you can find out more about us, each and every one of us, at essentialcoachingskills.com. Thanks.